constantly through Exodus. Like the women keep saving the day, right? Whether it's the midwives, whether it's the Pharaoh's daughter, or here, like why would these women be the ones who are charged with going into the households and doing it? And so,
well, one of the best predictors of economic development in the developing world is the freedom and rights associated with women. And there's a mythological similarity between women and the foreign in some sense. And so what you might say is that to the degree that a society is capable of, the patriarchs in a society are capable of attending to and valuing their own women who are other, they're capable of valuing the other as such.
And it speaks to security, right? To the lack of need to control women speaks to masculine security is one aspect. But the other thing that struck me is that the empathy here, because empathy is an argument let's say it's ascendant in certain ways in the contemporary culture that might feel like in ways that are slightly corrupted, but empathy used to true end can lead to change in evolution and revolutionary thinking and revolution. And that comes in through them. And the strength of the women here is really remarkable because they do a whole bunch of things for no reason that kind of makes any sense politically, based on the basis of that, like the great feminine power. The other thing I was going to say about the gold, you're talking about, Jonathan, the ways that the gold is appropriated. You know, nobody ever says where they get their weapons when they finally have the weapons. And so it's like, I think that it's either two options if I'm looking at this as a thriller writer. I mean, one of it is that this gold and silver is forged into weapons that is taken from here, you know, or maybe they pulled it off the washed up bodies of the Egyptians, right? But there's
it's the same idea,
like right? So either way, it's appropriated, right? It's forged into not just the messaging and the tabernacle of God, but also the forcefulness has to come in some ways from materials from the Egyptians.
There's another side of this, I think, is, let's call it psychological. In a certain sense, I think what these first 3 chapters have done for us is really sort of set out the whole drama of the human soul, like the whole drama of the spiritual life. And you start in oppression and alienation, unable to get out of it yourself, longing for resolution, for homecoming, for the promised land, and you can't get there. And so in a way, I think the story, this Exodus, is of course precisely about God's work in moving us from exile and from oppression to homecoming and resolution and nourishment. But I think there's a side to this that is present in the spoiling of the Egyptians that's also psychological, and that is within that drama of redemption, or let's say, or salvation. There's, you know, it's not like salvation could be real, true salvation if we forgot about everything we were before. And, you know, if somehow our sins and our sufferings, our toils and tribulations that define us is like this day to day, who I am and have been, and we all carry these things with us, certainly I am today and any day. If those are somehow not part of where you end up in your resolution, then it's not you that is saved. And so there's a sense in which I think this is, at least metaphorically, the jewels of the Egyptians are a way of saying that this time of oppression and slavery will yet be turned into the promised land in a sense.
Well, that's particularly relevant when you're trying to deal with something like the atrocious tyranny of the past. It's like, well, even if it's Egypt, and Egypt is obviously cast as the tyrannical oppressor here, that doesn't mean there isn't the gold that you could use to build the proper tabernacle, and there are also the proper weapons that can still be derived from it, even if it's painted as the tyranny itself. So,
may I just make one concluding remark about this fascinating motif of spoiling the Egyptians, and that is in relation to the notion of Eurocentrism, which of course we hear a lot about, and many critiques of Eurocentrism. And yet, one of the striking aspects of European, let's say, Occidental culture, I'm thinking of North American culture as part of that Occidental world, of course, is, as a French philosopher recently has noted, is that it is eccentric. So this is a philosopher called Remy Brague. And Remy Brague has very powerfully argued that because our ancestors in Europe for centuries were using Latin, but Latin as a translation for sources either at the fringe of Europe, Greece, or outside Europe, Hebrew. So that European culture was based on the sense that even though as a monk in Monte Cassino or elsewhere you might be using Latin, that the Latin is a translation, and it's a translation of the Greek or it's a translation of the Hebrew. And he argues this is one reason why medievals took up Arabic so quickly, because once it became clear that Arabic